Humanity is a plague. Humanity is a poison. Humanity is the real virus. Humanity is a parasite. The human parasitism narrative has grown increasingly common in day-to-day discourse, with folks casually confessing their simmering misanthropy. You don't have to look very hard to figure out why this sentiment has gained popularity. The impact of modern industrial human activity on the planet is blatantly apparent and truly global in scope. The disruptions to our flora, fauna, soil, water, atmosphere, and climate cannot be ignored. Despite the empty promises of governments and greenwashing PR campaigns of corporations, the reality of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the persistence of Saharan and Gobi desertification, the unmitigated emission of toxicants into our atmosphere, the commonality of irreversible oil spills, the acidification and eutrophication of our rivers, lakes, and oceans, the deforestation of our old-growth forests, the loss of our topsoils, ever more paper and plastics, and the Holocene extinction cannot be ignored. These are grave affronts to the environment that stain the last 100 years of our millennia on this earth. Just as colonialism swept through continents, so too has environmental destruction, as the violence inflicted upon both peoples and their lands cannot be unyoked. Of course, prior to the era of European imperialism, human activity has damaged parts of the earth, but this activity has typically been local in scope. Human activities have also helped cultivate many of the so-called natural environments we seek out today, like the Amazon rainforest. Human parasitism is not a natural outcome of humanity. Otherwise, we would have doomed ourselves long ago. No, this mass destruction is recent. Not embedded in human nature, but distinctly political, economic, and social. Sir David Attenborough and others go around stoking fears of overpopulation, despite the already declining global population growth rate, provoking existing eco-fascist and racist narratives about the impoverished peoples of the world, while brushing past the unequal distribution of resources and overconsumption under the socio-economic system of racial, industrial capitalism that truly fuels this crisis. The affluence enjoyed by some is the waste that we all suffer the consequences of. The colossal burden of consumer society, ever heightened by a mass media obsessed with conspicuous consumption, can no longer be ignored. Earth is not some lump of resources to be extracted and polluted. It sustains a complex web of life, one that this system is very clearly set out to destroy. Whenever I hear people lament the parasitism of humanity, I think back to a quote by the communalist Murray Bookchin. Obviously, man can be described as a highly destructive parasite, who threatens to destroy his host, the natural world, and eventually himself. In ecology, however, the word parasite, used in this oversimplified sense, is not an answer to a question, but raises a question itself. Ecologists know that a destructive parasitism of this kind usually reflects the disruption of an ecological situation. Indeed, many species that seem highly destructive under one set of conditions are eminently useful under another set of conditions. What imparts a profoundly critical function to ecology is the question raised by man's destructive activities. What is the disruption that has turned man into a destructive parasite? What produces a form of human parasitism that results not only in vast natural imbalances, but also threatens the existence of humanity itself? This disruption is not only felt in the environment, but also in our relations with each other. Hierarchical social relationships beget a form of human domination that imbalances both our natural and our social worlds. The patriarchal family is basically the blueprint that planted this seed. Now the capitalists and politicians that dominate us, exploit us, and deprive us in their self-seeking pursuit of power and profit will go on extracting, consuming, expelling, and expanding at enormous proportions until the very end. This very centralized, very urbanized setup is highly burdensome upon our ecosystems, and the dissolution of community and local economy, caused in part by capitalism's competitive and divisive nature, has enabled this capitalist exploitation. Under the euphemisms of growth and progress, we and every aspect of nature become simplified and commodified. In seeing like a state, Anthropologist James C. Scott describes how states reduce the complex, messy illegibility of human life into simplified, legible formations, ripe for control. For example, the transformation of open commons into private property, the centralization of water, transportation, and energy systems, and the shift from diverse and fluid local naming customs to permanent state-recorded and tracked identification systems. I see this simplification in the treatment of our environment too. For example, the standard of monocultures that both feed us and eventually poison us. The immense chemical requirements of industrial agriculture to manage the soil and the so-called pests that arise to regulate its violation are environmentally devastating. Cities are frighteningly standardized across ecosystems, transforming vast swaths of natural diversity into smoggy, noisy edifices of concrete, glass, and metal. Some cities, regions, or even entire countries are simplified further by their dedication to particular industrial requirements. Some places exist as mere resource depots, while others house the people that manage the trade of those resources. These cities are quite bureaucratic in their approach to their immense urban populations. The logistic challenges of transportation, housing, feeding, educating, employing, and entertaining such dense populations tends toward the submission of the individual to the massified, the creative to the standardized. The systems that run our lives are faceless and impersonal. We have little influence on the everyday political machinations of our societies. We watch as nature is debased. We watch as complex ecosystems, forged over millions of years, absolutely necessary for the support of our own species, are undermined and undone. The systems of human domination, patriarchy, capitalism, the state and its many institutions, have done well to disrupt our connection with the land and make us complacent. This is what makes social ecology so critical. In its very essence, social ecology is about the relationship between ecological and social issues, understanding that ecological problems arise from social problems which are caused by social institutions rooted in hierarchy and domination. Ecology deals with the balance of nature, which includes humanity. Despite the arrogance of some folks, nature viewed in the totality of its aspects, cycles, and interrelationships exists beyond our claims to its mastery. The issues ecology deals with are inherently political, so by necessity, ecology must be both critical and constructive. To achieve the necessary harmonization of man and nature, we must create a decentralized and distributed, liberated human community that lives in a lasting balance with its people and its natural environment. The anarchic implications are clear. Some may protest that such a society is unrealistic. Why think of what could be when it's so much easier to limit ourselves to what we are? Surely we should continue along the so-called practical, rational, capitalist, and statist notions of the world. And yet we have reached its breaking point, and things continue to break down. These oppressive structures are eroding our humanity, our communities, and our ecologies. In fact, their domination threatens the viability of life itself. For us to thrive and survive, we need to embrace more anarchic conceptions of society, and especially one of its most essential principles, diversity. Our environments should be varied, complex, and dynamic, as balance, harmony, and evolution in nature and society could only be achieved through organic differentiation, not sterile standardization. The communities I'm envisioning are decentralized but socially and economically interconnected, confederating while maintaining the principles of free association for both communities and individuals. For people to be invested in their society and their environment, we must relearn the practice of participation in communal processes. Horizontal decision-making power, responsibility, and the consequences of such must be equally distributed. Our role in the ecological community must be significantly transformed, most pressingly in the realm of agriculture. Vast factory farms and unsustainable industrial monocultures must be phased out for decentralized polycultures. We must familiarize ourselves with the sensitive subtleties of the land, maintain the health of the soil, increase the sustenance of the watershed, and cultivate diversity of the flora and fauna specific to the regions we inhabit. This can only occur on the human scale. When it comes to technology, it is absolutely vital that we shift away from the violent mining practices occurring around the globe, scale down the wasteful mass production of many technologies, abolish the practice of planned obsolescence, produce and distribute necessities like pharmaceuticals safely and effectively, explore the possibilities of low-tech, distribute the infrastructure necessary for production and transportation, and develop the machines and tools we do use for durability and multifunction. I don't believe every technology can or should be developed exclusively on the local scale, because I don't think every community can or even should be entirely 100% self-sufficient, but it's something I believe we'll be able to figure out better in practice. Also, renewable energy technologies have some issues attached to them, particularly related to the sourcing of their materials and their production capacity. So while we may utilize the power of the sun, wind, and water suited to our regional energy patterns, we also need to reduce our energy consumption to accommodate the inevitable material limitations. We seriously need to undertake the task of creating a new way of life based on a more playful form of labor instead of the ecologically and physically exhausting form of work that currently exists. It will require significant effort to make that quantitative and qualitative shift to both cut down on the amount of BS work being done by a significant margin and transform necessary and useful activities from 9-to-5 slogs to pastimes we can have a say in, take a rest from when needed, and actually enjoy. Human parasitism, the force that destabilizes, regresses, and debases the natural world, is not some inevitability of our existence. To believe as much as to leave room for the corrosive and violent potentials of ecofascism. It is the consequence of a disruption found in patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and the state. Our survival is dependent on shifting toward the practice of anarchic ecological principles that seek to respect, conserve, and preserve freedom and variety between humans, between humanity and nature, and within nature itself. We need to create real communities, capable of bringing out the full potential of each individual and ecosystem, and freeing them of the oppressive burdens of authority, so that we can truly humanize humanity. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your fellow peoples. Thanks once again, of course, to the family, including our newest members, Prince of Void, Dumpy Grimbo, Mayhew, Miles Toon, and Frankie Gorora. Join these beautiful humans and support me too on patreon.com/sainttrue. Check out all my other videos for a range of radical topics. Follow me on Twitter @_sainttrue. Thanks again. Peace.